So, chapter 26. They've gone onto the Rainbow Temple Wheel, they've left it, and they're going to the amphitheater for the concert. The amphitheater was enormous inside. There were rows and rows of seats on more levels than Lucky could count, all built around a central stage that was carved out of the hillside. Every seat was occupied. It was a full house, yet he and his friends had been given the very best seats right at the front near the stage. High above them, the Rainbow Temple Wheel was turning slowly in the night, casting a warm glow over everything. He imagined himself still up there with Professor Bazantine and Bazooka, watching the world go by. He regretted the harsh words he'd spoken, but he felt at peace with this decision. He was never going to use the power again. He was right after all. It really was a curse. He felt sick to think he'd been burning his life away. Gala's prophecy had chilled him to the core. Maybe she's wrong, he told himself. Maybe if I don't use the power anymore, I'll be okay. If I can just find my father, then he'll tell me the truth, the whole truth. The lights went low, the amphitheater fell into an expectant hush, and Lucky focused on the stage. There was nothing at first, just darkness, blackness, silence. Then came a small, soft, silvery sound, like the chime of a faraway bell. Lucky shivered with recognition. Around him, everyone in the amphitheater held still, as if under a spell, as slowly the sound got bigger and closer and clearer. A light began to glow on stage. In the light stood Gala. She was singing, her fingers sweeping across the strings of a musical instrument, her bare feet planted firmly on the floor. The song seemed to be rising up, coming through her as if she was just a channel for it. The sound deepened. It started to surge and swell as if it were taking off, and Lucky felt his blood surge with it, felt his head tighten, his cares and worries lifting from his shoulders. And all around him he saw people with wide open eyes, their expressions telling him they were feeling the same rush he was, the same exhilarating thrill. Everyone stood up as the music lifted off, and it began to fill Lucky with the most powerful feelings, feelings that streamed up from every centre of his being, the very centre of his being. This is it, he thought, the sound of the stars, singing in my dreams. It can't get any better than this. But even as he thought this, the music built further. It grew richer, deeper, stronger, without ever losing its delicacy. The music and his feelings both growing and growing until he found himself grinning, just grinning with the beauty of it all. And still the music stretched out and shone into the night. For an hour or more they stood there swaying, transported to a place as far away as the deepest space, yet as close as their own heartbeats. It was just like hearing the music of life, endlessly renewing itself, like an ember of light in the dark, a spark of silver in the black. And as they swayed together in time to the music, Bixer Quicksilver reached out to Lucky, took his hand in hers, and squeezed it. Her hand was warm. It felt smaller than he expected, and softer too. He squeezed back, and out of the corner of his eye he saw her smile, like a comet in the night. At that moment she looked so beautiful to him, so true and alive. She held on to his hand, and it was like electricity going through him, like fireworks in his heart. Connected, he felt connected to her, and together they were connected to everything. Feelings were flowing into him and filling him up. Oh, they were huge, these feelings. What were they? Where did they come from? He didn't know. All he knew was that he wanted to hold her tight and never let go. He wanted all his life to be like this. And then Frolix put his huge arms around them both, and the three of them were hugging, dancing, swaying together in time to the music. And Lucky smiled, like he'd never smiled before. It was like his whole body was smiling. I think it's called happiness, he realised. The strange feeling that I'm feeling, I think that must be its name. A moment of perfect happiness. It lasted just a moment. And then he felt the earth shake beneath his boots as a massive blast ripped the night right open. The blast knocked him clean off his feet. Stunned, he cowered on the ground, shielding his head as shockwaves scorched the air above him. He looked up. Above the amphitheater, over the hill, the Rainbow Temple Wheel was exploding. The horror was inconceivable. Lucky saw compartments shattering, crystal cracking as the wheel was ripped apart. He saw people falling from the sky, but everything came in flashes. There was a moment, then another, yet the two were not connected. An image, a blast of sound, and no flow. And where the centre of the wheel should have been, there was now nothing. Lucky stared and stared, but his mind couldn't seem to get a grip on it. His eyes kept sliding away. The centre was gone, but he couldn't see it through to anything behind it. There was just nothing, absolutely nothing. His eyes lost focus. His field of vision narrowed. All he could see now was himself. Everything else was fading away. An overpowering wave of despair hit him. He felt as though his life was suddenly totally meaningless. All hope and purpose and connection was destroyed. All that remained was a terrible emptiness inside. Nothing matters. Nothing matters anymore. Lucky, someone was shouting a million miles away. Lucky, look at me, the voice insisted. He wished they would go away. Look at me. Come on. Someone squeezed his hand, someone warmer and smaller and softer. He squinted. It was Bixer. He could see her. She was right there in front of him. She was holding on to him like she was holding on to life itself. She was calling out to him. He looked into her silver eyes and his field of vision widened. The blur cleared a little. She matters. Of course she mattered. The sense of despair receded just a little. He fought it back, clung onto Bixer as clarity and meaning and focus returned. Bixer matters, and Frolix, and Professor Bazantine, and... the Professor was on the wheel. He looked up, but there was only the skeleton of a structure, just spokes now, revealed like bare bones, crumbling in slow motion. He looked up. There was a terrible ringing in his ears. Somewhere in the distance, shots were being fired, sirens were wailing. Around him, people were screaming in terror. They started to run as panic spread like fire. The air smelled scorched. Bix's voice cut through it all. Could have been us, she was saying. What happened? He asked her. What was that? A dark matter bomb. Nothing else could do this. Did you feel it, Bixer? That wave of despair, that horrible blur? I felt it. Like everything came apart. Time, space, everything. That's a dark matter bomb. They destroy the connections. They destroy everything. She looked up at the wheel. I can't believe it happened here. How could King Theobroma do this to his own people? Lucky looked around. He could see Axel with that terrible emptiness in their eyes, like black holes in the sky. A million-mile stare. The living death. And now he knew how it looked from the inside, because he'd been there too, for a moment. He'd had the living death. Suddenly, out of nowhere, it had struck Scorpio 6 at exactly the same moment as the dark matter bomb. And yet, why didn't everyone have it? Why was he okay now, like Bixer and Frolix? Wait, Frolix was not okay. He was huddled on the ground on the other side of Bixer. There was something very painful about the way he was sitting. He was clutching his head, rocking back and forth. Frolix, what's wrong? Called Lucky. Frolix didn't answer. He just kept rocking backwards and forth. He looked cut down like a giant tree that had been felled in a forest. He doesn't have the living death, does he? Thought Lucky, his stomach lurching at the thought. Please, no, please let him be okay. Speak to me, Bixer yelled at her brother. Frolix, what is it? What's wrong? I don't know, gasped Frolix. His starry eyes were blazing. It's like my head's exploding. I can't control it. Hold on to me, said Bixer, reaching over to him. You're going to be okay. But Frolix looked very far from okay. As they lay on the ground, people all around them were stampeding in terror, trying to flee from the amphitheatre, crashing past the security guards, sweeping them aside like an avalanche. And yet it was no safer outside. The wreckage of the wheel was raining down from the sky. A great pillar of smoke rose up in its place. The air was full of fragments and shattered crystal, as if the atmosphere itself were wounded. The Professor was on that wheel, said Lucky. The Professor and Bazooka. For a moment Bixer couldn't speak. Her needles were jet black and she couldn't look Lucky in the eye. Then, they're dead, she said at last with terrible simplicity. You saw it. No one could survive that explosion. We're lucky we were shielded by the amphitheatre, so we didn't get the full blast. All this is just shockwaves. But he can't be dead, said Lucky. He can't be, can he? Bixer clenched her fists. Come on, she said in a low voice. We have to see Gala, remember? She hauled herself up. We have to get your astrolabe back and find out what the stars told her. Maybe there'll be something that can help us. Lucky stared up at the ruin of the wheel, tears behind his eyes. What about Frolix? He managed to say. End of part 1.